G'day and welcome to the Make It With Myles podcast, where we talk about all things related to building and construction as well as the real estate industry through the lens of a building inspector. Okay, so we've got two formats to the podcast itself. We've got the shed, which talk about all that sort of shit. As well as that, we also have the journey. The journey is where we sort of dabble in every now and then about some personal development things or updates on what I'm doing. Interesting, cool things that come up every now and then because you know what? We all want to be better, get better. The world gets better, and that's the whole point of it. So on this episode, we'll be discussing what is included in a building inspection. We'll be talking specifically with pre-purchase building inspections. There is a podcast already about what's not included, so have a check that out if you really want some more details in what we're not going to touch on. But in this episode, we're going to be going through all the items that we sort of look for, how and which we go about it, the limitations on what sort of things are and what they aren't, especially in regards to access and restrictions, and go from there. So hope you enjoy. So first things first, we'll be looking at the purpose of the inspection. So the inspection itself, a pre-purchase building inspection, focuses on a visual inspection. Okay, so it's a visual inspection of the building, and it's to identify major defects and give any opinions of the overall condition of the home itself. Okay, now it's done in a way that it is inspected based on the age of the property. Okay, so if it's an older property with a lot of the defects, you might not be picking up every single minor bits and bob, but you'll be getting the main things that are of concern and need to be understood, so you can make that informed decision to understand what's going on with the property itself. And that's what it does. It helps buyers protect themselves by not putting themselves in a situation where they're buying themselves a lemon. And it also works in conjunction with sellers as well. You can get an inspection done prior to going on the market, so you understand what issues are going to arise when the buyer, which 85 to 80% of the time is going to get a building inspection done. You can sort of jump on the front foot of that and understand the issues that are present. Or if you're even just living in a home by itself and you're not selling or buying and you just want to know the condition of your property at that time, you can get a pre-purchase building inspection done. Same sort of scope. They'll pick up all the major defects, minor defects, and advise on what recommendations you should do to make sure your house is going to sort of obviously outlive you, but it's not going to fall apart the next day, okay? So it's a really good tool to use, just not just buying and selling, but also maintaining your property as well. And I'm not biased because I'm a building inspector. I just see these issues all the time, and it pisses me off, all these people that have all these issues in their homes, and they have zero clue, which is completely fair and reasonable. But if they were to pick something up early days, that issue wouldn't be such a big problem over a long period of time. So the main areas that are to be inspected, if they're accessible, is the interior of the building, as well as at the exterior of the building, roof space, the exterior of the roof, subfloor space if applicable, and the site itself, which is within 30 metres. So it's like your paths, your driveways, your fences, retaining walls over 700 mil, sheds, carports, all that sort of shit as well. Okay, so they're sort of the main areas, and that's how it's usually broken up into when you sort of get your report punched out. The way in which I'm explaining this is somewhat based on the Australian standard, which all building inspection reports need to comply to be a compliant building inspection report. So what I'll do, I'll expand on those little areas and just sort of talk about the things that I look through as I go through each space. So what you'll find with some building reports is that they don't go sort of room by room. They might go by area. So for me, I find that's a bit shit, to be honest. Reason being is if there's a crack on a wall on one side of the house and there's another crack on the wall on another side of the house, or there's water damage in all these areas, it's just a messy report. It's just a big blurb of shit, really, and it doesn't really break into specific spaces. So the app that I use, the way in which it works, you can just go room by room. So it gives a real detailed report. You take a photo of the room, right, bedroom 1, these are the issues in bedroom 1. The door's not latching, or there's some structural cracks on the wall, or there's water damage in the walk-in robe because on the other side is the bathroom. Things like that, okay? So what we'll do is we'll talk about each area and then go through just a couple of common things that we look for throughout that process, okay? So these are the things that are included. So interiors, we're going to be looking at things like ceilings. So we're going to look at like sagging, cracking, dampness, things like that, okay? We're looking for items that are defective or showing signs of issues that are within the home itself, okay? So you can have a hairline crack on a wall, and that can mean completely nothing and just be general movement, or you can have a hairline crack on the wall with a combination of the floor being out of level with external brickwork issues, with some drainage issues, and all that ties together into a major defect where there's been footing subsidence and it's resulted in a crack on the wall itself. Okay, so that's the way in which we sort of go about it. Walls, things like bulging, cracking, distortion, again, similar scenarios. The floors themselves, so how level they are, any sort of movement or dampness that might be present. So you might have rising damp coming through the actual slab itself in specific areas, or you might have slab subsidence. So we chuck a level on the floor in multiple areas. Now, some inspectors go above and beyond and have laser levels throughout the whole house, or they might have digital water levels, which is a fantastic product. it's a basic visual inspection. So the way in which it works is we're like the GPs and everybody else are the specialists. So we come in, we have a good knowledge base of what's going on, and then we provide comment and recommendations based on what we see on what next steps to take. Okay, you should really, ideally, when you get a building report, it needs to have actual action items that you can do. Okay, in some circumstance, I've come across a couple of reports where it's simply crack on brickwork, seek engineer. Right, that really means fuck all. That doesn't mean anything to anyone. Doesn't explain what the issue is. Doesn't go on to understand as to why it is an issue and the steps to take going forward. Okay, so you really want someone that can give you some clarity in regards to the defect. And if you ask them questions, hit them up with questions all the time, and they can't even give some reasonable answers as to why it's been caused or what's going on, they're full of shit. They don't know what they're talking about, all right? So be mindful of that. Other than that, interior, we're looking at windows and doors. So the operation of them, damaged, seals, things like that. Water may be getting in. And then obviously kitchens, bathrooms, laundry. So these are high risk areas, okay? I spend more time in these specific areas because this is where the most expensive problems come from. Things like bedrooms and living areas and spaces like that are pretty straightforward. They're never really too difficult. In those areas, you're looking for more movement issues, and then near the wet areas and in the surrounding rooms is where you're looking for any sort of water getting penetrated into the substrate itself, like in the wall linings or under the floor or something like that. And we're looking for those types of signs, okay? That's the interior itself, all right? That's all the things we're looking for. Exterior, we're looking for all the walls, the windows, the cladding. So we're looking for the integrity of it, if there's any cracking, if there's any, the damp course, what's its state, is there rising damp? So we're looking at the external structure itself. So it doesn't matter what the product is. Like it could be brickwork, weatherboards, it could be V-paneling. It could be fucking anything, to be honest. What we do is we go around and we're looking for defects within this sort of structure itself and picking up items that can lead to issues in the future as well. So you might have gaps around windows. There might not be no leaks present, but I'll put it down as a minor defect because a little bit of water could potentially get in, all right? So the minor defects themselves aren't specifically... it can be just general wear and tear, maintenance items, things that just haven't been done great, but they're not a major issue where, you should step back and, holy shit, I shouldn't buy this property, or there's some big costs coming in. But they are very beneficial. And pretty much if you get a building report and knock out all your major defects, if any, or if it's just all minor defects, once you pretty well knock them out, your house is going to be schmicko. There's nothing more to do it. It's just continue to maintain the property, all right? And which not a lot of people... on a balance of probabilities, really, really do these days. So if you can be that individual, you'll be kicking ass. And whenever it comes time to sell that property as well, you're so far ahead in comparison to most people where you've done all the work, right? Because most people sell their properties, or when they put it up for sale, that's when they do all the work to the house. They maintain it and they pick up all the things and make it look pretty and fix all the issues that they've had for years and been too lazy to do, and then sell it, all right? So if you can keep on top of it, it's very beneficial for the home itself, okay? So as well as that exterior, we're looking at things like external lintels and chimneys, stairs, balconies, and those types of structures. So you obviously got your pergolas, decking, all that sort of stuff. Everything related to that's bolted onto the exterior of the structure is probably another way to put it. As well as that, we're looking at the roof exterior. Okay, so there are limitations and access restrictions on what we can do and what we can't do because we can't put inspectors in unsafe situations. So with regards to roof exterior, most of the time, if it's a single level structure, you can get up to the single level, walk around, have a look at what's going on. Some inspectors may not even do that. They might just go from a ladder only. For me personally, I'll get up on the roof, have a look. Again, roof tiles, poor maintenance is a massive one that comes up all the time. And you're looking at the types of cladding systems. So if it's a metal roof system that has been done correctly and there's no issues here, there, and where, as well as that, things like skylights. Skylights are a pain in the ass. We're looking at the guttering system itself, downpipes, so any rust, blockages, downpipes not connected, downpipes clearly overflowing in areas where they shouldn't, which can lead to movement issues. So with all this type of information, we just sort of pick apart all those bits and bobs, put it into the report itself. And based on sort of multiple areas around the home, you can determine what key issues are actually happening with that property. And that's where the building report, when it comes together as a summary, that's what it delivers, okay? Next spot is the roof space. So we're getting into the roof cavity itself. Again, there are access and restriction issues here in place. So inspectors are not put in unsafe situations like falling through the ceiling or just not being able to get into the access space itself. Now, with regards to that, we are looking at the structure. So we'll go in, we'll determine what type of roof it is, if it's conventional or a truss roof or whatever. Now, we know the capabilities and what's required for each of these, and what things can occur over a period of time. So we're looking obviously at any sort of excessive sagging, termite damage. Something common that's happened a fair few times for me is like the old school truss roof systems. They've used like hardwood timber itself, and because it's shrunk over a period of time, all the gang nails have sort of like peeled out and delaminated, which completely kills the whole truss system itself. It's going to fall apart in a matter of weeks. So I've seen a couple of homes like that, which have been pretty sketchy, I must admit. Obviously looking at sarking, installation, any sort of damages, party walls between two parties, the insulation in there, any sort of sketchy or dodgy wiring. Now, we're not electricians, so we don't go to full depth of that, but we still make some sort of comment on things that we can see that do look wrong, and they'll be put through as a defect, or if it's a very obvious one, put through as a defect, and specific action items to take from that, which is usually just get an electrician or a qualified trade to come out, assess that issue, and action accordingly. Very simple. Outside of that, we've got the subfloor. So subfloor is when you have a cavity beneath the home itself. It's not sitting on a concrete slab. There's a cavity. It's on stumps or brick piers or whatever it might be. In here, we're looking for things like your bearers, your joists, your stumps, any sort of rot, any sort of movement, any sort of termites. Again, we're looking for sort of plumbing elements as well. So underneath shower recesses, underneath specific wet areas, you'll see if there's any leaks coming through to the subfloor. So you can have a shower that's leaking, but it's not leaking into the walls, it's only leaking below. Okay, so there's all these scenarios that can occur. And again, that can help us determine as to what the severity of a defect is as well. Like you can have a shower that looks sweet as, and there's maybe one crack tile. It's not a big deal. Like I'm not freaking out by it. But because I've seen showers where there's like 50 crack tiles and somehow water doesn't get fucking through, which freaks me out. But anyway, in some situations you might have one crack tile, and then you go underneath the house and it's pissing water. Like it is pissing. So you get to a point like, well, this is an urgent issue, all right? Or there's some situations where there's a crack tile and it's bone dry. It hasn't even seen a stain in its life. So you know something's working here. So then you can, the report itself is adjusted to sort of suit the severity of that issue. Okay, so it's a very, underneath the house really does tell a story about what's going on or what has occurred in this property as well. So that's a really big one. As well as that, in regards to the subfloor, we're talking about ventilation and drainage. These two things are very important because poor ventilation is what is conducive to termites. It also is a health concerns. I've been under houses before where due to poor ventilation, the whole subfloor, like the surface of the timber flooring was black. Like I'm talking black mold. It was huge. And I didn't even want to crawl to a certain point because it was just yuck. And I'm usually pretty useless with that sort of safety component. But other than that, these are, again, other important things because you need to make, you want your house to be healthy and you want the people inside to be healthy. So this is what gets raised during these scenarios and situations as well. Drainage is a big one as well. If the house, if it's underneath the property, the subfloor is wet and damp, okay, again, that is a leading indicator that there might be some drainage issues or there might be some surface water getting under the house. This, again, can lead to mold growth because it obviously creates a damp environment. As well as that, it can lead to footing issues because there might be a section that's super wet all the time, and it's because on the other side there's a downpipe which is not connected, or there's a downpipe connected to a stormwater drain which has damage within it, or something along those lines. Again, we're sort of pulling apart all these pieces and collating it into a report to provide a final overall summary and outcome of the property itself. Outside of that, we have got the site. So the site itself is everything outside of the building, the property structure, okay? So you've got your fences and your gates, surface drainage and any sort of potential water ponding. Again, that's another important one that not a lot of people are aware of how impactful it can be on the home. So you might have just the surface water comes straight next to the house, pools next to the house. That can lead to a lot of big issues that people are not aware of, okay? You've got your driveways and your paths, so we're looking for like cracking or subsidence, any sort of trip hazards, things like that, okay? So overall, we have a massive scope of the property itself, right? And what we're reporting on are major defects, so the obviously any sort of structural issues, any just major building defects themselves. It could be water leaks, things of concern that if not actioned will be very impactful to the home itself. As well as that, we also look for serious safety hazards, okay? So that's sort of like what the major defects scenario looks like. Some safety hazard examples would be things like handrails. So they might not have enough gap between the balustrades and it's a second story balcony, so a small child can just fall in and fall off. Poor handrail systems, that's probably the biggest safety component. or hazardous materials as well. So I'd probably enter in there with regards to asbestos, potential asbestos linings. Now, a pre-purchase building report does not report on asbestos specifically, because to do that, you've got to get an asbestos auditor. It's a certified trade. You've got to get it tested, all this sort of stuff, to do it the right way. So, but in some circumstances, we might see a product that looks like it's at high risk of being asbestos, and we'll mark that down as a hazardous material. Okay, so be mindful of that. As well as that, the defects we're reporting on as minor defects. Minor defects can be just general wear and tear, maintenance issues, the minor things that should be done to the home to bring it back to a sort of condition where it's sweet and there's nothing really you have to do about it. Minor defects aren't paint chips or anything along those lines. It is simply defects that have impacted the home, and it's worth rectifying it, because it could be over a long period of time, it could cause major issues, or it's a sign of something that's occurred elsewhere. So it's just a matter of just doing those things and you should be sweet moving forward. Safety hazards, again, we've spoken about that. Anything posing an immediate risk to your safety. All right. The common exclusions. So this is, obviously I've done a whole entire episode on this. It's worth listening to it so you can get an understanding of both sides of it, what's included, what's excluded. So then your expectations are met when you do engage these building inspectors. Again, the common exclusions are things like the electrical systems, plumbing, appliances, gas fittings, aircon units, the insulation, is it adequate enough, all those types of things. Okay, so we're not going in and we'll turn on a light to get into a room. If it doesn't work, we'll make a comment about it, but we're not going to the switchboard, checking all the wiring's correct, checking the wiring and the roof's all right, checking that each GPO is working as it should and it's earthed correctly, checking that hot water systems are adequate and safe and all these types of things. If we do come across some items that do look a bit sketchy and we do know that there are going to be some issues present, it's a recommendation to the next trade to come in to make that informed decision. And that's what the building report really reflects as well, is that it's a recommendation for what's next steps to take. Okay, so there is a bit of a grey area with regards to things like footing movement, where we might see a couple of things that are of concern that could lead to being a footing movement, and then get the specialist trades in. So maybe an underpinner and someone does a drainage inspection. They come in, the underpinner comes out and does a full survey of the house itself, and he might just run his digital water level to all multiple areas, front door all the way to the back of the house, and you can know how out of level it will be. In some circumstances, I've found that most of the time for me, I'm usually bang on, but there's been a few occasions where the movement hasn't been significant enough to require any treatment, or is a major structural defect. Okay, so yes, the footings have subsided, but it's not to the point where they would recommend a treatment be done. And then on the back of that, there might be some drainage issues that were rectified. So they might run the camera through and they're like, yeah, well, there's a patch here. So it seems as though that there was an issue here one time. It's been rectified. The house did subside a little bit. It's stopped now because the soil conditions are all stable, and there's no further action. So as the inspector, I come in, I go, right, there's something subsiding here. Get it checked out by these individuals. They come out, they do their scope. Back into that, they get clarity, they understand what's going on. The house is fine, there's no major issues. From my perspective, I've done the steps up to getting the right people in. They've continued their process to get better clarity, especially within their specific industry, and then that can close out that defect right there in the spot. So that's like when you get a building report and that does have major defects, it doesn't mean the house is going to fall down and it's fucked and you need to start again. There's just steps to be taken to get more clarity around that defect and what that impact is going to be within the property itself. It could even be a $200 fix. It could be a plumbing fixture under the house, which just needs to be reconnected, and your major defects solved. So just because you get major defects within the building report itself doesn't mean it's an absolute shitter. It just means that there's things that really need to be actioned because they're very, very important, okay? So that's where the expression that I get frustrated with, especially from real estate agents and buyers and home sellers, is like, did the inspection pass or fail, right? There is no pass or fail, in my opinion. In my opinion is, I'm delivering a report which tells a story of the house, of all the things that are really fucking wrong, all the safety concerns, any minor defects related to the property as well, and I've collated it into this beautiful document, and I'm going to pass it on to do what you want with it, all right? I don't believe a pass and fail is a thing, because in some circumstances, a failed house, all right, is the perfect opportunity for someone that's got a trade background that wants to do renovations, or is already going to pull apart the bathroom and redo it. So technically it's a win, okay? It just is what it is. They're going to do the work anyway. So that's how the scope looks in regards to what is included in the building in the building inspection itself, okay? Some other tips that I'd probably recommend when engaging a building inspector through this sort of process, and I've done an episode on this as well anyway, but ask questions. I really find that most poor quality building inspectors are the ones that can't answer questions to their own defects that they've raised within the building itself. So a couple of real estate agents have reached out to me before where they've said, oh, this bloke's full of shit and this and this and this. And I'm like, sweet, just ask the question. The man that has the knowledge will have the answers. He will be able to guide you through the whole process. You can talk about it in all different aspects of what the key issue is and what relevant steps to take. And that was what makes a good quality building inspector. Make sure that they can communicate to you. They call you. Definitely, that is a non-negotiable. After they're done on site, make sure they give you a call and give you a verbal overview of the house itself, okay? That goes a very, very long way, especially when you're a novice within, properties and building inspections themselves, and you don't know much about houses and defects and stuff. You need to be able to have that communication with your inspector so they can explain what these things are, rather than getting a blank report and a blind report, and you're reading through it and you've just got no clue what the fuck it means. Or you'll read one aspect and you'll blow it up into a big issue. Again, major cracking on brickwork is one that I get all the time, and I make the call and it's like, all right, there's just one corner of the house which has a major defect. All right, if it was to be rectified, it's going to be an underpinner, it's going to be a small job. I don't know how much it's going to be, but these are the steps you go down, all right? Without that conversation, it might just go on, oh, major footing defects, underpinners, oh my God, and they're freaking out and they make up this horrible story in their head and then they don't proceed or they exit the contract, all those types of things. And you might miss out on a really good opportunity. So make sure you are communicating with your building inspector. Some other things that are not included in a building inspection, which I want to get clear on as well, is cost estimates. In our Australian standard, to be compliant, pre-purchase building inspection report, there is to be no costs estimates within that sort of report itself, because it goes completely against the Australian standard. You should not be getting a building report that says it's going to be $50,000 to $60,000 to fix all the defects. It's not how it works. It's not how it should work. It should be a report that's independent, based on the property at the time of the inspection, for the buyer or seller, whoever's getting it undertaken, and that's it. Very simple. I do find in this industry it's getting a bit sketchy as well, where there's a couple of building inspectors that promise, all right, we'll do a building report, and then all of a sudden there's going to be $50,000 to $60,000 worth of defects. We'll take that off your home at a fee, or we'll renegotiate things, and it just gets completely corrupted and it's full of shit. So that's what I want to change with the industry itself, because I think it's bullshit, and it's completely unfair for the vendors. It's unfair for the buyers themselves. All right, it's just corruption, and it's not how it should go. So basically, to recap, what's included in the building inspection? You've got interiors, you've got the exterior itself, the roof exterior, roof space, subfloor, sites. You're looking for major defects, looking for minor defects, things that you need to be well aware of with the property itself. Basically, by the end of it, you'll get given a report and have a phone call conversation, and that will explain all the key issues within the home, what needs to be done, who needs to do it, how to go about it, why it's an issue, and then based on the back end of that, you can make some informed decisions and you'd be sweet to go. Anyway, I hope that helps. If you found any value in this at all, please give it a share and send it on your way to whoever might need it. At the moment, it's getting close to getting Oz Property Report launching, which I'm bloody excited about, so I can help turn this industry around and get some good inspectors on board. So have a look at that coming inbound. Outside of that, have a ripper arvo and hooroo.